Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. I'm delighted to share an entire episode from the second season of my Conversations with Commerce Next podcast. From Disney to Playboy, The Gap, PepsiCo, and now back into retail with Claire's Stores Inc., Kristin is one of the most experienced and passionate youth-oriented retail CMOs working today. In a wide-ranging interview, Kristin takes us through her fascinating and varied career in retail marketing and the valuable mentorship and learnings she has picked up on the way. Next, we talk about how she is leveraging her experience to explore, then expand the possibilities and scope of a beloved youth fashion brand into corners of the market and corners of the world that take retail in all channels to a whole new level. Let's listen in now.
Welcome to Conversations with Commerce Next, Kristin. You've had such an interesting career across many iconic brands, including The Gap, Playboy, PepsiCo, and of course now the fashion brand Claire's. We are excited to have you on the podcast to learn more about your background and your vision for Claire's. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, to start off with, Kristin, we'd love it if you could tell us about yourself, your professional journey in and around retail, but also what brought you to Claire's as their new CMO?
I've had a very interesting career, grateful for every opportunity that has been given to me. I've spent time across multiple industries, and what I find in linking them all together is that I usually find myself attracted to brands that are closely linked to culture, and very much about, design and aesthetics. So I spent time in the entertainment industry and actually started my career at Disney. And, I really learned a lot there about how to build brands. I also spent time at NBC Universal. I spent time in the retail fashion industry. I worked for Calvin Klein, Gap Inc. I was the chief marketing officer for Liz Claiborne's Lucky brand. I spent time in the beauty industry working for Revlon. And I spent time as the chief marketing officer for Playboy, which I will write a book about someday for sure. I was the chief marketing officer for Pepsi. And so now I find myself at Claire's. And like I say, when I think about my career, the connective tissue is really around culture and, with a play on a design and aesthetic with all of those companies. I joined Claire's after taking a little bit of time off to make sure that my daughter got off to college okay. When I stepped down from my role at Pepsi, I was consulting for a little bit, and I really wanted to get back into the corporate world. I wanted to do something where I could really sort of make a difference for young consumers or women. Like that's kind of what I put in my head. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I loved my time at Pepsi. It was wonderful, but somehow like making a cultural impact in the lives of like Gen Z and Alpha with Claire's was so appealing to me. I find myself here, and it is a company that has a very long history. It's been around for 50 years. Global brand. I don't think many people realize how long the company has been around. And really, it's kind of a new day. We are building this into a global and iconic lifestyle brand. So sort of, yes, we have our retail channels, but there's something about this brand where we can play more roles in consumers' lives.
And actually, let's double click on that for just 1 second, because I think a lot of our audience is familiar with Claire's, but some perhaps more familiar than others. So it would help to get everyone on the same page. Tell us a little bit about the business, how you go to market, and what makes Claire's different. And I'm noticing one specific point where you're referring to it as a brand. And I think a lot of folks may think of it as a retailer with, over 1,000 doors. So talk about that evolution as well.
Yeah, for sure. So Claire's, like I say, has been around for 50 years. And, most people, it's funny because when I say that I work there, the first thing they say is, oh my God, I got my ears pierced there. And, you enter Claire's enters consumers' lives at such a momentous time. It's a rite of passage to get an ear piercing. And so, we usually stay with consumers through their first ear piercing, and then on into their proms and, first communions, bat mitzvahs, whatever it is. And then they come back again to get the latest style and fashion at a great price. So yes, for many, many years, we have, had retail stores around the world. We are in the process of, evolving that. We have an omnipresence retail system. So we've got our digital presence, we've got our owned and operated stores. We just expanded the footprint into distribution channels outside of our owned and operated doors. What's at the heart of this whole opportunity is that when you talk to consumers, and we spend a lot of time talking to consumers, they've said to us, you guys could be so much more to us because we've been around for so long. And I think we hit on, like I say, a consumer nerve in terms of that first rite of passage, but also we're a platform for self-expression. And what consumers have told us is, listen, we want cafes from you. Yes, I love the fact that you have these amazing accessories. But when I think about self-expressing, I could do my dorm room, I could do apparel. Like we've even had consumers tell us that they want cafes from us. And so, we just see a huge opportunity to, I think, give consumers a platform across many areas of their lives to express themselves.
Kristin, it's clear that your background in Pepsi, very youth-focused, would prepare you well, or would put you in the same ballpark as talking about a youth fashion brand like Claire's. Talk about your assessment of the brand when you first got that call, when someone first said, picked up the phone, however that connection was made. What was your first impression of that call? Talk about that, and did you right away see a connection there? And what was your first thoughts?
Whenever I think about like any brand or business, I always start from its history. And then I think about, what it stands for today, what it means in consumers' lives. And then I just naturally go to, where can you go? Where can you expand the brand? And I feel like that sort of came out of the training that I got really early on at Disney, right? So Disney is brilliant at taking the characters, developing intellectual property and these franchises where, yes, you have obviously the content and the entertainment, but you also have a massive consumer products business around some of these films. You also have massive experiences. So for me, when Claire's came to me, I thought about the nostalgia factor of the brand. It's a beloved brand. It's a trusted brand. I thought about where the zeitgeist is going in terms of like right now for this generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it is all about self-expression and, literally being who you are, whether it's, wearing polka dots one day or, purple eyeshadow the next, or being a jock or defining yourself as gender fluid. I thought to myself, this could be such a cool moment in time for Claire's, not just as a retailer, but like really doubling down on itself as a lifestyle brand. Let's
talk about the moment in time we're in right now. I was watching a video of a presentation you gave, and it was talking about, oh my God, look at the world we're in. It's so fast paced. And then I clicked and it was 2017. All right, fast forward to 2022, disruptions from the COVID era to what's happening today. From your perspective and from your background, when you think about the time we've just been through and the times that we're in today, can you differentiate for us, or in your own mind, changes in consumer behavior or thoughts, perspectives that were kind of an adjustment to a particular period in time versus something different, something like a structural change that has taken place that we all need to pay more attention to and think about moving forward?
When you said that, I thought about a poem, and the poem starts off like turning and turning in the widening gyre, right? It's like the world just keeps moving faster and faster and faster, right? And so I think for marketers, brands and businesses, it's finding what's unique to each generation, right? And so I think when we talk about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, for them, it's really about this binary to a fluid lifestyle. And so it's about sort of democratizing bias. And, they don't just challenge convention to challenge convention and to just be rebellious, but they really want to like further open their lives to experience. And I think that that's, a little bit different from past generations, right? And I think that purpose-driven is going to continue to be incredibly, incredibly important to this generation. Emotional well-being is critical to this generation. And I think that brands that are, we always talk about brands being authentic, but like really having a heart and a perspective and a point of view and understanding just what this generation has been through, I think is incredibly important. Coming out of COVID, in particular, a lot of these kids had something so detrimental happen to them. Like they basically missed 2 years of school. Like, can you imagine if that like happened to our generation? So I think that is going to be something that's going to be really important. And they definitely have this demand for, enlightened experiences. And when I think about, the pace of life and what we're moving towards, it's always going to continue probably to feel like it's moving faster and faster. But I do think that it's like taking a breath and figuring out how you connect with, what it is this generation is thinking and feeling. And I think that that's how marketers kind of make their way through the clutter.
I want to touch on a brand architecture question. So amazing experience, Playboy, Gap, PepsiCo, now Claire's. When you look at a brand, and you touched on this earlier when you talked about your work at Playboy, how do you understand how far you can push a brand's parameters? When your first day in the office, you got a whiteboard, you got a clean desk, you got a cup of coffee on your desk, and you're thinking, well, how far can I even frame this brand? Is there natural limits to brand expression in your architecture, or are those artificial? And you really start with literally a clean whiteboard?
That's a great question. So my philosophy is, and in some ways I always take the first step, which is like, what's in the history, what's in the DNA, right? I talk to people who've been at the company for 30 years to really understand, like from their perspective, when you were here with the founders, or whether they were founders or not, like what was at the heart of the brand. From there, I talk to consumers. I usually go out into culture, and, I remember at Playboy, we brought a group of people together from the entertainment industry. We brought sexual philosophers together to figure out like where the zeitgeist was going. So there's a lot of conversations and a lot of due diligence in terms of like where the future's going. I usually bring a group of people together internally at the company, and there's a whole series of discussions and exercises that go on, because one of the things I've learned is like, you can't just suddenly come out and say, okay, the brand's about this, and push it down from the top of the organization.
We're reinventing, get ready.
No, bad. And I've done that a couple of times and made mistakes early on in my career. It's like you come out from on high, like, oh, here it is, that bad.
Here's the tablets. Here's the brand. Here's the brand new brand guidelines. Just please start doing them today. Yeah,
exactly. There's exercises, like one of my favorite exercises that I love to do with like a team of selected people from around the company is this thing called like your brand attic is on fire. So your brand attic is on fire. Like, what do you want to take about the brand into the future? And then like, what do you want to let burn? And, it's really interesting because I feel like that sort of unites everybody in terms of saying out loud, well, actually, we never really liked that part of what we were doing. And so, in some ways, whether you've been at the company for 50 years or you're a new person to the company, like it ends up uniting everybody. The other stuff that I do, obviously, is kind of go out and talk to consumers, take a temperature check, and then really kind of use my own hunches in terms of, how much we can push the brand. I inherently believe that today's consumers are multifaceted, and the best brands exist in multiple places in their lives. First of all, for convenience sake, And like, if I love a brand and it's doing everything that, I want it to do, and it aligns with my personal belief system, like, yes, show up more places. I even think about, brands and companies that I love. And if I find something that just like fits with me and who I am, I trust them to like enter into more places in my life. And I definitely think that that's the case for the next couple of generations coming down the pike.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure and hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss another great episode. We'll be right back with our interview with Kristin Patrick from Claire's right after this message. Bloomreach is the world's #1 e-commerce experience cloud, empowering brands to deliver customer journeys so personalized they feel like magic. It offers a suite of products that drive true personalization and digital commerce growth, including discovery, offering AI-driven search and merchandising, content, offering a headless CMS, and engagement, offering a leading CDP and marketing automation solution. Together, these solutions combine the power of unified customer and product data with the speed and scale of AI optimization, enabling digital commerce experiences that convert on any channel and every journey. Learn more at bloomreach.com. That's bloomreach.com. I want to double click on one thing, as Veronica said. Your brand building thing, at Pepsi, you would judge market share, brand awareness, regard and recognition, but there's a whole cast of characters involved in whether that beverage is actually sold on shelf and at what velocity. Now that you're again kind of at this retail, how do you connect the brand work you do with the ROI of moving units, about creating sales, about hitting ROI objectives?
So it's interesting because in some ways, when you have your own owned and operated channels, it's a lot easier to use data and analytics to measure how you're succeeding or not, right? When you work at like some of these big global brands, your relationship with the consumer is held with the third-party distribution system that you're servicing, right? So the customer was Walmart, Target, 7-Eleven. And so you getting real-time data about how the business is moving can be very difficult. So, my favorite brands to work on are ones where, they're shopping online. I can see what they're buying. I know immediately if they don't like something. I think for this generation in particular, like our organic social channels are a wealth of information and knowledge, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And I think, the brands I've worked on are companies where they have their own credit cards is a massive amount of amazing information. I've been thinking a lot about Claire's and consumer insights and, really using 24/7 conversations as well as all of the information that we have at the company to make us smarter about our merch picks, to make us smarter about our marketing programs. And you can't do that with every company. And you can't do that with every company based on, I think, who you're selling to and what the distribution strategy is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the benefit of being, having that direct relationship with the customer versus the indirect relationship with the retailer to the customer. Yeah. And you get so much more firsthand information. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about career. At Pepsi, you worked with Indra Nooyi, who is one of the top female executives in corporate America. What did you learn from that experience, and what aspects of PepsiCo's culture are you bringing to Claire's?
I loved my time at Pepsi, and it is definitely, I would say, one of the best cultural marketers in the world. In addition, I think that the way they think about marketing, it's not just an activation strategy. The marketing team, they're trained as general managers. So they really kind of drive and run the business. And they're kind of at the center of the universe from an activation perspective, but also from a product perspective. They oversee many parts of the business. So it truly is like a best-in-class brand management system, which I love. Now, that is quite different from retail, where you usually have marketing, merchandising, and that partnership is incredibly, incredibly important. But I am bringing sort of some of the brand management philosophies to Claire's, because I think that, as we evolve to thinking about, our owned and operated retail channels and our e-commerce business and, maybe even branching into the metaverse, it's like, what are all of the places where Claire's can play? At the heart of it is that brand. Right? The traditional retail fashion organization, I think, needs to be a little bit different here because of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And especially since it seems like you're also not only offering the product in your own stores, but there seems like a bit of a wholesale business developing that will kind of go well beyond the direct-to-consumer business. Is that what I heard in the beginning? I want to clarify.
Yeah, that for sure. I think that there's that, and like I say, I definitely learned about best-in-class general management through Pepsi. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity actually for the fashion retail business to learn from some of the CPG companies. And, I look at the retail business, and a lot of owning your own retail doors is kind of a dream come true for a marketer, because you can control so much in terms of what's going on in those stores. And, you can get real-time data. You're constantly talking to consumers. And so I always loved that aspect about working in retail, when we could test things very quickly and pivot. So it's nice to kind of be back on this side of the fence doing this.
If you're enjoying this interview, you may want to join us for the Commerce Next Summit on June 21st and 22nd at the New York Hilton Midtown. We'll be gathering our community of trailblazers and changemakers to talk about the future of digital commerce and share the latest strategies for e-commerce acceleration. The theme of the summit is seizing the next wave of growth, and we'll be covering everything from how to set up shop in the metaverse to scaling performance marketing strategies with first-party data. We hope you'll join us in June. Learn more and register at commercenext.com.
And then I think you asked me about Indra Nooyi. She was an extraordinary leader. She was fair. She was human. She was tough. I especially loved when she talked to us about, as a woman managing career, her children growing up, and some of those discussions, just meant the world to me while I was raising my daughter and, doing that job. And so to have a leader like that, who, like I say, is an incredible mind, but also to share some of those personal stories, was really nice to be around.
That's amazing. And it gives you kind of great experience. I love the thinking about, you have to be business owners, like P&L ownership, kind of align the two parts of the business, but then also align to the human aspect of the business and really understand the people who work with you and help them bring their best selves forward. And that's probably been a very amazing experience.
It was. And in fact, one of the things I do want to share with you, which was so amazing and heartfelt. Indra wrote a letter to my parents, and she literally took the time to write a letter to my mom and dad and said, you may find this odd that the CEO of the company is writing you a letter, but, I believe that great families are behind kind of great people. And this is what Kristin's doing at the company. And I have to tell you that my mom has that letter framed. She was crying. She was so proud. It's seriously, how wonderful is that she took the time to do that for some of her executives.
Wow. That's incredible. That's very heartfelt. I want to talk a little bit about the role of the CMO, because you obviously come from a very strong brand background. The CMO role has been evolving. It's always been a combination of art and science, but it does feel like, especially in retail, that it's tilting towards science these days. Talk about where you see the role of the CMO evolving and how it will transform over the next, let's say, 5 years.
Yeah, the role of the CMO, like, I don't think about business as brand and brand as business, right? So I do not believe that it's just about marketing activations. I believe that the chief marketing officer plays a really pivotal role in a company as setting sometimes the vision for the company, right? Because they're so close to the consumer. I think that a lot of the things that CMOs will be doing will be heavily steeped in data and analytics to drive decision making. But I also think that the best CMOs will be thinking about the business results. I think that they'll pivot quickly based on how they're seeing consumers reacting. I think that the CMO role is, in some ways, interestingly enough, particularly for retail, very, very steeped in customer service lately, and being sort of the front line of that, because usually the first complaints you hear bubble up in organic social, and so sort of being the master of always all things consumer. But I do think that for chief marketing officers in the future, it should be much more about business strategy and sort of driving where the company goes in conjunction with the CEO.
Well, it sounds exciting. We'll get a link from you and we'll put it in the show notes to where you can get in touch. And are you a LinkedIn person? Is that something that people could reach out or follow you on LinkedIn or any of the other, your own social media?
Yes, I love LinkedIn. Well, yep.
All right, fantastic. Well, listen, on behalf of Veronica and myself, thanks so much for joining us today. It's really super to hear your perspective, such a great depth of experience. I can't imagine a better choice that Claire's could have made to someone to lead them into the future. It's been wonderful to have you on Conversations with Commerce Next, and I wish you continued success in all that you do.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here with you guys.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Conversations with Commerce Next. Please follow us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast platform, where we will be sharing career advice and marketing strategies from e-commerce and digital marketing leaders at retailers and direct-to-consumer brands each and every episode. Commerce Next is a community, event series, and conference for marketers at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. Through our online forums, interviews, webinars, summits, and other in-person events, we harness the collective wisdom of our community to help marketers grow their businesses and advance their careers. Join Commerce Next events to meet other industry leaders and learn the latest e-commerce and marketing strategies. You can find upcoming events at commercenext.com. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next Podcast, and the Food Professor Podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Michael LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.